Hi everyone, it's Vicar General Cardinal Kelly Patrick. It's a little hot right now, so I'm going to try to rush through this without hopefully ranting and extending it for too long. I know it's hard to listen beyond about 3 to 5 minutes anyway, but let's talk about how humans are great at criticizing what they don't understand. I know that's a shocker, huh? We've experienced a lot of that. So let's reflect on a scripture. Hebrews 13:2, brotherly love. I don't care what version you refer to, just follow verses 1 and 2. Continue in brotherly love. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. All right, we know why that is so important, I hope. But people do need to continue to keep that in mind. It'll help you in your everyday exchanges. When you're writing a message to somebody or commenting on something, or before you speak to them, you might say something that you will regret, okay, because you don't really have the full story or the background, and you don't even really know that person, in all honesty. So it is our jobs to get more information on their perspective, where they're coming from, what their background is. Some things are very apparent, but you'll know it whenever you have the encounter. So just think about that a little bit. Now you know that the end of the world is here. Christ returned January 28th, 2011, but many are missing the mark. Why is that? Okay, so that's kind of tricky. There's a myriad of reasons, all right? And have you ever been in a situation or ever tried to judge a situation that you've never been in? It's very difficult. Well, this is that time, okay? Because how often does Christ return? I mean, it's a second coming. It only happens once in all lifetimes that have been known on earth by mankind. All right, so it may not be easy. You got to be really careful, because this is a time period where we're not supposed to judge him. He is judging us. All right, so I need to remind people of that. He is here to judge us. Yes, guess who? You. That's the us I'm talking about. Revelation 19:11-16. I don't care again what version you choose. That's your business. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. So this is real, folks. He doesn't come down here and make a bunch of feel-good conversation and tell you how wonderful you are. If you have things you got to straighten out and make ready and prepare for. All right, so there's not a whole lot of time here to mess around and argue with people and be a problem maker or a slacker, whatever. Let's just buck up. So why are they missing the mark again? Partly because people are what? Judging the book by the cover. All right, so if you're still doing that, then just admit you can't read. I mean, I can't figure out why you're still doing that. It's 2018. We're supposed to be spiritually matured. We have been evolved over time. So this saying is not a cliche. It's actually a deep and profound wisdom and philosophy that can be used in your everyday life to add to the quality of not only your life, but your soul. So when people do this kind of thing, judging the book by the cover, they're often projecting their own limitations, insecurities, and needs. Okay? So when they're saying, I couldn't possibly listen to her because I saw her cleavage, or she wore a necklace that looked like something that should be worn, in a nightclub. Okay, is that even logical? I mean, Christ walked around 2,000 plus years ago in dirty, tattered, clothes often, because he was ministering to the masses. He really didn't have self-time. So do we really have time to do this? Yes, there's a difference between a black tie dinner and, stumbling upon somebody's channel and saying, rude things because of the way they look or sound or whatever the case may be. Let's get our priorities straight, okay? So the other problem is people walking in you know, and judging based on the chapter that they walked in on. They're not really looking at the history, the foreword, the foundation, nothing. They're just, you know, stumbling upon something and not really doing any adequate research. So you really got to go back to the start. You got to ask questions. I mean, when we were taught to seek the Lord when He returns, that really means extending opening your heart and extend yourself and learning as much as you can. Some things don't take long to figure out. Okay, I get that, but it's usually not based on the cover. Okay, and often I hear complaints about the Messiah being, oh well, you know, he was in jail. Didn't that happen 2,000 plus years ago? They arrested him on false charges and pretenses. I mean, let's get real, folks. Okay? There is so much more to this. And yes, again, man is fallible. The court systems are corrupt. Chicago is corrupt. Do you know how many murders they have per day? It's ridiculous. They don't have a fair and just ruler over there. Nor does the world. But hopefully that will soon change. So, aside from the story, guess who wrote it? Guess who the grand director is of all? Pretty much the only one who could look down on us. God. Alright. So, think about, you know, the big script. Okay, the one that God writes. So when people start throwing things like semantics at us and, you know, well, but my pastor said this and, you know, this hadith here or whatever. Are we talking about man? I'm talking about God. God sent His Son, and He chose His Son. And it's let go of what man's, you know, brainwashed you with, and realize that God's got this. He knows better. So you people who think you've got it down to where, okay, I think it's 90% Rael is 90%, you know, Messiah, but I'm still kind of wondering about this other 10%. Okay, so what are you basing that 10% on? Is it man's expectations? That same old cover on the book scenario? Yeah, pretty much. It's usually that. You know, I'm waiting on this one other little prophecy that came from man that I you know, and I don't even know where some of these things come from. They're not from God. It's not divine knowledge from God. We've got a long ways to go, folks, on this whole judging the book by the cover thing. And I'm not just talking about looks. I'm talking about the way we speak, the way we act. It's, you know, they want this character that they call Jesus instead of Yahshua, that sings Kumbaya and at a campfire and telling stories. And don't forget, you know, when He returns, what I just said, He's here to judge the earth, you know, and make war with it. So it's a new and different time. So you got to shake yourself out of that mindset, and come to the reality that, you know, it's getting in the way of your salvation. Learn to be curious instead of judgmental. You know, as humans, we're not good judges anyway. I mean, if we were, we wouldn't be facing what we're facing on planet Earth right now anyway. We got corruption, we got pollution, we're being irradiated, we're on the cusp of World War III because of our choices that led up to this point. Everybody making these choices with our eyes wide open, and the masses following the leaders that could care less about what God's will is. Okay, so you don't clearly have the whole story. You're not seeking the whole story. You think you understand, but you don't. So why not take a look at those tattered pages between the covers, and you might see that there's much to be discovered. You've heard all of this before, but if you actually implement it, it becomes wisdom. So how many people miss this mark for the story? How many are missing out on it? Well, think about it. There's about 7.6 billion humans on Earth right now, and that's probably a low number because every minute it's building. So only we know this much: 144,000 will go, of the untouched souls of the children, will go into heaven, otherwise known as one of the heavens as being Elysium, where Christ's throne will be, his heavenly throne. And then New Jerusalem and its outer regions are another matter, but the chosen will enter into the new kingdom of Christ, where his footstool is upon earth. Okay, and if you're wondering just how many that's going to be, it's going to be roughly at the 500 million to keep the perpetual balance with nature. Okay, we are overpopulated. That just needs to be admitted to. And we're irresponsible about procreation. If we weren't, we wouldn't have this problem. So let's just be honest. Remember, most will be cast out into outer darkness, and most likely it will be lukewarm people arrogantly rejecting Christ, the Messiah, or those who refuse to follow his way and follow what he's asked of them. Okay, and this doesn't include the various degrees of hell. Okay, that population is another matter. But here's the fact, is that you're not going to live in comfort if you're not among that 500 million. Okay, and that's actually a low number compared to the 7.6 billion. All right, deducting from that. So that's a lot of people missing the mark. So we got to start examining where our errors are, what we're doing wrong. Many of you missed his return. Okay, there's only about almost 10,000 people in the congregation of Lord Rael, in the international congregation alone. That tells me that there are a lot of still good hearts out there, but they're still not seeking him properly. They're blinded by this earth and the way it's got them in this constant state of cognitive dissonance and ignorance. And it's mostly self-imposed. But they're not seeking God or Christ. If they were, then they would be following, his son. They're seeking a picture, a painting, a Hollywood movie character. They're seeking whatever they were taught in a fanciful story, And yes, these stories were real, okay? And they were great parables and they had lessons to them. But it's time to move forward, to fast forward to the book of Revelation, where you're being judged and he's making war with earth. Why? Because we screwed up. We don't know what we're doing. The multitudes do not know what they're doing. Christ is not a subservient wimp that loves the correct. That is a feel-good lie that churches somehow perpetuate. So they're all like, I'm good. God's got me. He's got my back, even though I'm not going to listen to him. Come on, let's get real. All right. In 2018, okay, this year is going to be the year where you want to already be prepared. Not in a state of preparing, not, I got to prepare. You need to be prepared right this second, because he could come just like that. And if you don't have the light of the Lord within you, and you're not sharing his truth with others, then you're one of those brides being left behind. You're like an empty flashlight. What good does it do? A lantern without oil. A vessel that's been created with purpose, but not being used. Gifts given that are just neglected or worse, misused. Okay, so try to work on making yourself a better person. And I'm not talking about good gestures and all that, or making yourself look good. I'm talking about going out and telling the world about God and his son, who has returned January 28th, 2011. Provide the evidences, look up the evidences, educate yourself, ask questions. We're not lazy. It's 2018, you got Google, you can type most of it in, but if you want the facts and the truth, untainted, you can go to the Congregation of Lord Rael on Facebook. It is under Facebook groups ICOLR, Okay, and you can still type in congregation, International Congregation of Lord Rael. He has other congregations throughout the world that you could type in, but that's the main one. And go to rael.org. That's ra-el.org, and get the evidences. Ask questions. Don't come in with a snarky attitude. That's not godly. Ask sincere questions. You have very little time. It's best to use it wisely. But what we need to do in the case of Christ is, it's clear that mankind's poorly judged him. Okay, it only defines who they are and not who he really is. Okay, so speaking of judging, we're also, responsible how we treat our brothers and sisters. It's one of his base commands: love God and love each other. That's how things like World War III don't happen. But we've, again, failed. So we've got to admit we're not perfect. But what we need to do is focus on, okay, how far people have come, rather how far they got to go. Okay, start to recognize what good is within your brother and sister and yourself. Some of you are too hard on yourself. But now's the time to catch up and share this video, and let others catch up. Urge them to catch up. Give them the great news of the Lord's return. But hurry, time is short, folks. Now's the time to get right with God. Spread the word like wildfire. I love you guys. Love God, love each other.